The late afternoon sun hung low over downtown, its heat pressing against the concrete sidewalks and glass windows. Lieutenant Andre Williams pulled his pickup into the narrow lot beside the old Maplewood apartments. It wasn't a flashy truck, but it bore the small emblem of the fire department on its door, something he carried with pride even off duty. He was here for a short visit, nothing more, to check on a friend who lived on the fourth floor. He parked near the front, sliding his keys into his pocket, when a sharp voice cut through the air. "You can't park there." Andre turned to see a woman striding across the lot. She was in her 50s, her posture stiff, lips pressed thin. A gold bracelet jingled at her wrist as she pointed toward his truck like it was a crime scene. "That's for residents only," she snapped. "You people think you can just take up space wherever you want. Move it before I call the tow truck." Andre blinked, caught off guard by her tone more than her words. Ma'am, I'm visiting a friend." "Won't be long," Karen Whitfield, he would later learn her name, scoffed loudly. "Visiting or not, this is private property. And that truck? It's an eyesore. You don't belong here." A couple of residents paused on the sidewalk, shifting uncomfortably. They knew Karen's voice, sharp, unyielding, often looking for someone to correct. Andre kept his voice even. "It's a fire department vehicle. I work for the city." Karen's laugh was quick, dismissive. "Oh, please. Firefighters don't drive pickups. They drive engines. Do you see a fire hose strapped to that thing? Don't lie to me. You're just another guy with a big truck who thinks the rules don't apply." Her words rang out, bouncing off the brick walls of the lot. Andre sighed softly. He had faced flames that roared louder than this. He had carried people through smoke so thick he couldn't see his own hands. He didn't need her approval. But still, the sting of her dismissal pressed against his chest. He met her glare without anger, only calm resolve. "Ma'am, I serve this city. Whether you believe that or not doesn't change the truth." Karen rolled her eyes and crossed her arms, planting herself firmly in front of his truck like a guard dog. "Move it!" Now the tension hung heavy, the onlookers silent. No one could have guessed that within minutes, her words would crumble in the face of smoke, fire, and the undeniable proof of who Andre really was. Karen didn't budge from her spot in front of the truck. She crossed her arms and let her voice rise so that anyone within earshot could hear. "You know what I think?" she said, her eyes narrowing at Andre. "You're just another guy with a story. Everyone's got one these days. Oh, I'm a firefighter. I'm a soldier. I'm important." She laughed, sharp and grating. "If you were really a firefighter, you'd be in uniform. Real heroes wear the badge, not some dirty work shirt." The words hung in the hot air like smoke. Andre stood still, his jaw tightening. He had faced worse, in firehouses, on call-outs, even at grocery stores where strangers questioned whether someone like him could really be who he said he was. He had learned not to lash out, not to let anger be the headline. Still, the insult cut deeper than she knew. He had pulled bodies from burning cars, cradled children in smoke-filled apartments, stood in collapsed buildings searching for survivors. But to her, he was just another guy with a truck. A few residents nearby shook their heads. One young man muttered, "Leave him alone, Karen." But she ignored him, her voice climbing higher. "You people always think the rules don't apply. Well, not here. Not in this building. We don't need your excuses. You want to play firefighter? Do it somewhere else." Andre exhaled slowly, steadying himself. He met her stare, his voice calm and even. "I don't play firefighter, ma'am. It's who I am. It's what I do," Karen smirked. "Prove it." The challenge cut sharper than she realized, for even as she spoke, a faint sound interrupted, a shrill alarm, muffled but rising from deep inside the building. Seconds later, a scream. Heads turned toward the second floor, where a gray wisp of smoke had begun to curl from an open window. The mocking smile on Karen's lips faltered. Andre's eyes snapped upward, his whole body shifting from stillness to focus in an instant. He reached for his truck without another word. The time for insults was over. The time for action had come. The piercing wail of the fire alarm tore through the afternoon, bouncing off the brick walls of Maplewood apartments. For a moment, the parking lot froze. Neighbors turned their heads toward the building, unsure if it was a drill or a malfunction. But then, came the unmistakable sound, a scream from a second-floor window. Fire! Somebody help! Thick gray smoke began to billow out, curling upward into the hot sky. Within seconds, panic took hold. Tenants burst from the lobby doors, clutching pets and children, their faces pale. A woman stumbled barefoot onto the pavement, coughing violently. Another man shouted, "My father's still inside." Andre's focus sharpened to a razor's edge. The insults, the smirks, the parking lot confrontation, all of it fell away. He swung open the bed of his truck, pulling out the gear he kept close even when off duty. Turnout coat, helmet, gloves, and a compact breathing mask. Every movement was quick, practiced, second nature. Karen stood frozen, her earlier defiance melting into confusion. "Wait, what are you—" But Andre didn't answer. He snapped the mask into place, shrugged into his coat, and ran straight toward the front entrance. "Get back!" he shouted, his voice carrying over the chaos. "Clear the way!" The crowd obeyed, parting instinctively. Parents grabbed their children tighter. Some neighbors reached for their phones not to dial 911, because someone had already done that, but to film the man who had, only minutes before, been told he didn't belong. Andre disappeared into the smoke-choked stairwell, his silhouette swallowed by gray. Outside, the scene erupted. Alarms blaring, people crying, neighbors shouting names of loved ones still trapped inside. Karen's hand trembled against her chest as she stared at the door where he had vanished. A boy clutched his mother's arm. "Mom, is he going to be okay?" The woman, her eyes wet, whispered back, "If anyone can do it, he can." And so, in the same place Karen had mocked him as just a guy with a truck, Andre Williams had already become something else in their eyes, a firefighter answering the call. The building was burning, lives were at stake, and Andre was inside. The moment Andre stepped inside, the world shifted. Smoke clawed at his face mask, thick and acrid, stinging his eyes even through the visor. The stairwell was dim, lit only by the pulsing red of the alarm strobes. Each step upward felt like entering a furnace, the air growing hotter, the roar of fire louder. "Fire department," he called, his voice booming through the smoke. "Follow my voice." "Stay low." A figure stumbled toward him, a young woman clutching a toddler to her chest. Her eyes were wild with fear. Andre grabbed a blanket off the banister, wrapped it around them, and guided her down the stairs. "Straight out the door. Don't stop running until you're clear." She nodded frantically and vanished into the night air below. Andre turned and charged upward. The second floor was worse. Flames licked at the doorframes, paint bubbling on the walls. He heard coughing down the hall and kicked open an apartment door. Inside, a family of 3 huddled near a window, trapped by the smoke. "Come with me," he barked, moving with precision. He dropped to one knee, handing the father a wet rag from his coat pocket. "Cover your face. Hold on to each other. Stay low." Crouched beneath the worst of the smoke, he led them into the corridor. One by one, he kept them moving, his arms steadying the mother as her legs buckled. When they reached the stairwell, Andre slung the father's arm over his shoulder, carrying him halfway down the steps as the family clung together. By the time they burst outside, the crowd in the parking lot erupted in cheers. People pulled the family into their arms, sobbing with relief. Karen stood rooted in place, her hands trembling as she watched Andre disappear back into the smoke without hesitation. Inside again, he pressed higher, into the 3rd floor, where the fire raged fiercest. The heat seared through his gear, sweat pouring down his back. Still, his movements were deliberate, controlled. Training and instinct carried him forward. A faint voice cut through the chaos. The weak cry of an elderly man. Andre followed it, finding him collapsed in the hallway, gasping for breath. Without pause, Andre lifted him into his arms, as if he weighed nothing, and began the descent. The man clung weakly to his coat, whispering, "Don't let go." "I won't," Andre said, steady and certain. When they emerged, the crowd parted, awestruck. Neighbors reached out to touch the old man, to steady him, to thank the firefighter who had carried him out of certain death. But Andre wasn't done. He turned back, eyes locked on the flames still devouring the building. Somewhere inside, someone else was waiting. and until the last voice was silent, he would not stop. The third floor groaned beneath Andre's boots as he pushed deeper into the inferno. Smoke curled thick around his helmet, and every inhale tasted of ash despite the mask. Somewhere ahead, a child cried out, faint but desperate. "Hold on!" Andre shouted, his voice steady, commanding. "I'm coming!" He kicked open a scorched door and found a family huddled together, a mother shielding two young boys, their faces streaked with soot and tears. The hallway behind them was cut off by flames, the window behind them jammed shut. They were trapped. Andre dropped to one knee, lowering his mask briefly to fit it over the smaller boy's face. "Breathe through this," he told him firmly. Then to the mother, "Take the older boy. Hold his hand tight. Stay on my left side." He scooped the younger child into his arms, tucking him against his chest as he led them out. The boy's small hands clung to his jacket, trembling. Step by step, Andre guided the family down the dark stairwell, shielding them from falling plaster with his own shoulders. When they burst through the front doors into daylight, the crowd erupted again. The mother collapsed to her knees, clutching her sons, weeping into their hair. Neighbors pulled her close, praising Andre as he handed the boy gently into her arms. He didn't pause. Back into the smoke he went. Minutes later, he re-emerged carrying an elderly man across his shoulders, the man's legs useless but his eyes wide with gratitude. Behind him stumbled a young tenant who had been trapped in a laundry room, coughing violently but alive. The crowd could hardly contain itself now. Some shouted his name, others cried openly, their hands pressed to their mouths as they watched him return again and again. And still, he wasn't finished. From the far side of the building, a scream rang out, high-pitched, piercing. A little girl! Andre's heart surged. Without hesitation, he turned on his heel and charged back inside. Karen stood motionless in the lot, her face pale. She had mocked him minutes earlier, but now, with every person he carried out, she felt her words burn hotter than the fire itself. She clutched her arms to her chest, her voice trembling. "He's saving them all." The smoke grew thicker, flames licking through the roofline. Neighbors begged him not to go back, but Andre vanished into the haze one last time. Because until every life was accounted for, he would not stop. The crowd outside the Maplewood apartments was frantic now, eyes locked on the doorway swallowed by smoke. Flames licked from broken windows, glass shattering as the building exhaled heat. Sirens wailed in the distance, the on-duty fire crews racing to the scene. But all attention was fixed on the man already inside, Andre Williams. Seconds stretched like hours. Neighbors whispered prayers, clutching each other. The mother of the two boys sobbed quietly, rocking them against her chest. Even Karen, who had barked insults only minutes before, stood frozen, her hand pressed to her mouth. Then, movement. Out of the dark doorway, Andre emerged, his turnout coat singed, his helmet streaked with soot. In his arms, held close and safe, was a little girl, no older than 6. Her face was tear-streaked, but her eyes blinked open, alive. A roar of relief swept through the crowd. People clapped, cried, shouted his name. The girl's mother broke through the line, collapsing into Andre's arms as he gently passed the child to her. The woman sobbed into her daughter's hair, her gratitude spilling out in broken words. Andre pulled off his helmet, sweat streaming down his soot-darkened face. His chest rose and fell heavily, but his eyes were steady, calm. The eyes of a man who had done this 100 times before, and would do it again without hesitation. "Is everyone out?" he asked, scanning the faces around him. A tenant stepped forward, voice trembling. "Yes, Lieutenant." "You got them all." Andre nodded once, relief flashing briefly across his expression. Only then did he allow himself a breath that wasn't bound to duty. Behind him, the building crackled, flames spreading faster now, devouring walls and windows. But the people, his people, were safe. Every life had been pulled from the jaws of fire. The crowd surged toward him, hands clapping his shoulders, voices praising him. Children looked at him wide-eyed, as if they were staring at a superhero. Phones captured every moment, but the awe in the air wasn't about videos. It was about the man who had turned doubt into salvation. And standing off to the side, Karen's face crumpled. The man she had mocked as just another guy with a truck had just saved her neighbors, her friends, maybe even her own future. For the first time, she had nothing to say. Andre adjusted his coat, wiped soot from his forehead, and glanced at the crowd. "They're safe," he said simply. "That's what matters." And in that moment, nothing else did. The Maplewood apartments still hissed and crackled as the first fire engines screeched onto the street, their crews rushing to battle what remained of the blaze. But the hardest work had already been done. Every resident stood alive in the parking lot, coughing, shaken, but safe, and all because of one man. Andre Williams stood off to the side, his helmet dangling from one hand, soot streaking his face. He wasn't smiling, wasn't basking in the crowd's cheers. He simply scanned the people, counting, making sure every soul he had pulled from the smoke was accounted for. Neighbors swarmed him, their gratitude pouring out. "Thank you, Lieutenant. You saved my father. You brought out my little girl." Andre nodded quietly, shaking hands, his deep voice steady. "I was just doing my job." Children tugged at his turnout coat, eyes wide, calling him a hero. Families embraced him, their tears dampening his already sweat-soaked shirt. Even hardened men clapped his back with reverence. And then, through the crowd, Karen Whitfield stepped forward. The woman who had mocked him only minutes earlier now looked smaller, her shoulders hunched, her lips trembling. Her eyes darted down as if she couldn't bear to meet his. I was wrong," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't believe you. I didn't see you." She swallowed hard, glancing at the building that had nearly burned to the ground. "But everyone else did. You saved them. You saved us." Andre studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable beneath the streaks of soot. Then he said simply, "What matters is that they're safe. That's all that's ever mattered." Karen's throat tightened, shame burning hotter than the fire behind them. She lowered her head, stepping back into the crowd, her pride melted away. The mayor, who had rushed to the scene, lifted his voice. "Let it be known, this man is more than a firefighter. He's a hero to this city." The crowd erupted in applause, a roar that filled the street with gratitude. Andre lifted his helmet under one arm, standing tall but humble, his silhouette framed against the burning building. He didn't need the title of hero. He didn't need apologies. His work had spoken louder than words, and as the town watched him, their fear turning into reverence, they understood a truth that could no longer be denied. The man they had doubted, the man they had mocked, was the one who had saved them all. Respect wasn't asked for, it was earned. In smoke, in fire, in courage, and Andre Williams had earned it forever.